Well, hello there, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Paint Chronicles. I'm Emmy. Well, today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I've been asked about making tutorials before in the past, and I figured, well, now's as good a time as any. So today I decided to paint a picture of Mount Fuji. I found this photo online on unsplash.com, photo credit below, and I started painting the sky with a lot of white and a smidge of ultramarine blue. This part's kind of the easy part. You just have to learn your tools, for one thing, and I learned how to use my paintbrush in order to blend all of those colors together to make it look like a fairly solid sky with a slight gradient. Of course, adding the clouds is just a matter of taking some light blue and white, mixing that together to be mostly white, and then dappling them in. Sometimes I even like to use the pad of my finger to kind of touch on the clouds in order to make them even fluffier. Next, I began by adding the mountain. Again, with the mountain I used that ultramarine blue and a bit of white. I just made it a slightly darker shade in order for it to stand out from the skyline. Then I took another variation of those same two colors and made it a little lighter to give a mid-tone to my mountain where the snow was going to be. Of course, you've got little details here and there that I just followed along with the picture as close as I could, adding the little banks where I thought was necessary, before finally taking a mostly white but still slightly blue shade. Adding the highlights is one of my favorite parts of painting. It can really make or break a piece. I continued to make the snow drift along the side of the mountain, adding in a little more detail to the bottom edge where I saw very, very tiny distant banks. It's so remarkable the things that you can do with just messing around with the paints, mixing things that you wouldn't normally think to mix together. Thankfully, this was a fairly simple piece that required very few colors, and I thought that would be a great example to start with as far as trying to do small tutorials here and there. For this part of the mountain, I added more of that ultramarine blue and a tiny, tiny pinch of black in order to help desaturate my color. Desaturating helped give it a more even shade. It made the mountain more interesting in my opinion. I'm sure everybody has a different method to do that, but this was mine. For the trees, I promise you, I swear, I used a Liquitex Basics color called Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. Interesting name. I laid down the first layer of trees with a fan brush, fairly small, seeing as how this is a fairly small piece, and did that first layer of a slightly medium green color. Then I added a little black to the mixture and used that shade to make the nearest layer of trees, because the further back you go, the more atmosphere there is and the lighter things appear. So the trees in the back would naturally appear lighter than the trees in the foreground. Then I took that Hooker's Green Hue with a tiny smidgen of black and added a lot more white in to lighten it in order to get that slightly grayish, brownish green in order to highlight the trees, still using that fan brush. Next, I began adding in the branches. These I made with raw umber and black mixed together to give me a very dark brown. I took the finest line brush I had and began sketching those in as easily as I could. I always love painting branches. I find that to be one of the most relaxing and fun things. When I can really invest time in the details of a painting like tree branches, I find that to be very rewarding. Branches are flowy, loose, and fun. You can really take them in any direction you want to. And I especially love the cherry blossom branches because they have these little bumpy things. Each little twig kind of has a mind of its own. And while I stuck as close to the reference as I possibly could, branches allow a bit of creative freedom. That becomes really relaxing for me as I just sit there and let them all come out, whichever direction they go. And adding all the leaves and flowers or whatever is on these branches always really brings the tree to life. And that's part of the fun. For the cherry blossoms, I went ahead and used a red hue, just a primary red, a little bit of white, and a tiny bit of that raw umber. It sounds weird to add the brown to the mixture, but I find that doing little tricks like that, adding a little bit of black here and there, a little bit of brown, it really helps to tame down my colors so I don't have an overly saturated painting. Nothing stands out more to the eye than a color that's much brighter or much more vibrant than it should be. Then as I went along with these cherry blossoms, I added a little bit more white to each piece in order to highlight the different petals, using just a round brush. With each step, I added a little bit more white until I had about 4 different layers of the petals, so that they didn't all look to be the same color, the same shade, the same hue, slight variations of mixing my paint, and that's something you kind of learn along the way, how to mix your paint in order for it to work for you. If you give this painting tutorial a try, please post your pictures and tag me in it at Emmy's Art Stuff on Instagram. I would love to know that I was able to help at least one person try to conquer a mountain of a fear and paint something new. Of course, at the end, I took my white paint pen and just dappled in some of the really light petals, leaving some of the petals on the lower left-hand side less highlighted because they were more in the shadow. I always enjoy adding the highlights, like I said. It really helped to make these cherry blossoms stand out, to look more picturesque. Mount Fuji is a beautiful thing. This picture was so fun to try to paint. It presented a pretty great challenge. Mountains are always kind of a strange thing to paint. There's so many finite details and you can really drive yourself nuts with trying to get every single one of them. If you relax and trust yourself, you instinctually have this innate understanding of how a landscape should work. Test out all sorts of different brushes, whether that's round, filbert, flat brushes, liner brushes. Trying out different things can be so much fun. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell for notifications every time I post a new video. Don't forget to follow me at Emmy's Art Stuff on Instagram, and check out my new website, emmysartstuff.com, in order to find prints of all shapes and sizes on all sorts of different products. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see me paint next time. You have a lovely day, and as always, stay creative.